Okay, guys, let's talk about Unit 7, Lesson 70, Micro and Macro Evolution. I know that some of you are taking classes at Plant High called microeconomics, macroeconomics. Micro means small, small scale, the inner workings. Macro means big, large scale, big picture. All right. So what I would like to do is I want to show you these two animals first. The one on the left is a great blue heron. And the one on the right is a great egret. These two birds are awfully similar to each other. They have long snake-like necks. They have long legs so they can wade through kind of shallow water. They have spear-like beaks in which they do literally spear their prey. A fish, a frog, a snake, even small mammals like rats and moles. They'll spear them, and then they eat it whole. Now, are these two the same species? Well, there's a way to determine that. You might think, well, maybe they're just the same species but different colors, kind of like parakeets. You ever been to the pet store? You see a blue parakeet, a white parakeet, a green parakeet, a yellow parakeet. They're all parakeets. Maybe this is the same deal. A blue bird and a white bird, same thing. Maybe it's sexual dimorphism. Sexual dimorphism is where a male and a female of the same species look different. Kind of like a lion and a male lion and a female lion. A male has the mane, female doesn't. That's sexual dimorphism. Di means two, morph means appearance or shape. But to determine if these truly are different species or the same species, you basically have to check two boxes. The first box you would want to check is, can they reproduce? If the answer is no, like no way in the world these two can reproduce, then they are not the same species. Period. That's it. They're different species. On the other hand, if you put a check on that box, there's one more box you have to check. You move on to the next one. The other box would be, can the offspring reproduce? If the answer is no, then they are not the same species. If the answer is yes, then they are the same species. So I can assure you, in the real world, a great blue heron and a great egret are not the same species because they don't even bother to reproduce. They want nothing to do with each other. They're not attracted to each other. When they're looking for a mate, they're not looking for each other in this case. They are separate species. Now, just by the looks of them, would you potentially conclude, Megan, do you think that these two share a common ancestor where they may evolve from the same kind of bird? Yeah, I would totally agree. So do they have a common ancestor? Yeah, absolutely. But Megan, you share a common ancestor with a rat, a mole, a chimpanzee. If I go back in time far enough, you shared a common ancestor with a tree. Does that make you able to reproduce with a tree? No. So just because you share a common ancestor does not mean that you are compatible with an organism that may be very closely related to you. It doesn't mean that let's say that you could reproduce. If your offspring can't, then you're not the same species. And so that's going to get you to the first of these two topics. Whoops. And that's going to be, sorry, macroevolution. Now, macroevolution literally translates into large scale changes over time. Macro means large scale, and evolution means change over time. So large scale changes over time may, emphasis, not definitely will, just saying the potential is there, may lead to new species. And when I say time, I'm referring to millions of years. Evolution is slow. It's contingent on mutations as well as a few other things, which I will teach you tomorrow. for less than 71. Um, but it is just painfully slow. So Megan and I agree that these two evolved from a common ancestor, but then they diverged and they became independent species, separate species. That's evolution. There's actually a more specific term for this where a new species emerges. And that term is called speciation. I'm really going to try to burn this one in your brains because I can think back to last year. Everybody forgot this term. This term is basically the opposite of extinction, which I'm sure you guys have heard of before. Like every dinosaur is extinct. There are no more Tyrannosaurus rexes. When every individual of a species is gone forever, is dead, it is extinct. This is the opposite of that. Speciation is the emergence of a new species from an already existing species. Well, something that's been confusing my students throughout the day today is, could a descendant reproduce with its common ancestor? For example, we got the great egret, we got the great blue heron. They have their common ancestor. Here's where a lot of people get a little twisted today. We've already established that a great blue heron and a great egret are separate species. They can't breed with each other. But could either of them breed with their common ancestor? And today, a lot of people are saying, yeah. The answer is no. They're consider their common ancestor like species number one. Egret is number two, heron is number three. They're all different species now. They can't breed with each other. And the reason that they can't breed with each other is that the genetics or genome has become so different that it leads to reproductive incompatibility. The reason why an egret and a heron cannot successfully reproduce is because their genetics are too different. The sperm and the egg literally will not be compatible, like a key will not be compatible with the foreign lock. They have to be a match. Making life is hard. We're talking about things like chromosomes, matching up. If you have one species with X number of chromosomes and another species with Y number of chromosomes, they just don't match up. That's how it works. So I want to come down here. I want to give you guys a real life example between two types of lizards found in kind of Latin America-ish. This lizard lives in Central America, and it's called a spiny tail iguana. And it lives in Central America. If you ever visited a Central American country, Mexico, Honduras, Nicaragua, Guatemala, Panama, Costa Rica, I remember seeing them in Belize. Belize is right here on the Yucatan Peninsula. They're all over the place. Some members of this population, some of them, somehow, some way, managed to swim in the Pacific Ocean and ended up here. This little island archipelago off the coast of Ecuador. Do you remember what that little island chain is? Where is it? That's the Galapagos Islands. This is a marine iguana. And the marine iguana is found only in the Galapagos Islands. The marine iguana evolved from the spiny-tailed iguana. And they're both alive today. You don't see that very often in nature where the descendant and the common ancestor are alive at the same time. That's not that common. But here we are. So here's what I'd like to ask you guys a few things. I'm going to make sure I keep my voice elevated so the computer can hear me. So I'm not yelling at you guys. I just want to make sure the microphone hears me. All right. The marine iguana is in the Galapagos now. Now, did every single spiny tail iguana swim from Central America to the Galapagos? No, just like maybe just one little family, maybe like a family of a dozen. They just swam out there, and they were just aimlessly swimming, and lo and behold, they found land. Shot in the dark, they hit land, the Galapagos, and they just multiplied over millions of years, and they spread across the entire archipelago. And now the marine iguana is everywhere. I've been to the Galapagos; they're everywhere. You know, when you go to your house, you see the little lizards crawling around your sidewalk. That's what they're like. They're all over the place, but they're like this big. Could that marine iguana successfully reproduce with its common ancestor, the spiny-tailed iguana, the animal that it evolved from? No. If you put them together in the same like terrarium, they want nothing to do with each other because that marine iguana is a result of millions of years of evolution and being separated from the spiny-tailed iguana. Now, why did the marine iguana evolve that way? Well, evolution is a combination of 5 factors, one of which is mutation. I'll teach you the other 4 next lesson. But I think you guys would agree, are the selective pressures in Central America identical to the selective pressures in the Galapagos Islands? No. So the evolutionary pathway is going to be different as well. And the lizards that were in the Galapagos evolved one way, and the ones that were in Central America evolved another. And they got so different, their genetics became so different that they became different species, and they are therefore incompatible. Now, are they related? Absolutely, they're related. Just like all these iguanas are related. But could any one of these iguanas reproduce with another? No. Do you think all 7 of these iguanas have a common ancestor? Yeah. Could any of them reproduce with their common ancestor? No. Okay, good. Here's another one I want to show you guys. I can't remember the name of the source. I think it's like Dinohippus or something. This is the common ancestor to all horses. All horses you know today. It lived about 10 to 6 million years ago. It gave rise to modern day horses and modern day donkeys. Now, are horses and donkeys related? Yes. Are they one and the same thing? No. But if you've ever heard, horses and donkeys have been known to reproduce. And do any of you know what their offspring is called? It's called a mule. A mule is not a species. A mule is just basically a hybrid. Because what can't a mule do? It is sterile. Sterile is the same thing as being infertile. And because the mule is not capable of reproduction, what does that allow you to conclude about the mule's parents? Colin? They were different species the whole time. Okay, good. Here's something else I want you guys to see. Oops. Let me switch over to the internet here. And I got a couple pictures for you. This is a liger. That's fake. Don't believe everything you see on the internet. That's real. That's a liger. A liger is a hybrid between a lion and a tiger, but we do not consider a liger a species because a liger is just like a mule. It is sterile. So what does that tell you about a liger's parents, a lion and a tiger? They're different species. Are they closely related? You better believe they are. They're very close. Not close enough. Not close enough. Okay? So let me kind of give you a visual here as to how this works. And then we'll move on to microevolution. So let's say that we have a common ancestor. And some members of this population are going to evolve this way. And then some members of this population are going to evolve this way. Now keep track of these lines I have. Think of these lines like guardrails. So long as these 2 new populations, we'll just call it population left, population right. So long as they stay between these 2 lines, they're still the same species. I see it, Callan. Hold on. Okay. Appreciate that. That was helpful. So let's say that we have this common ancestor and one population is going to the left, one population is going to the right. So long as they stay within the guardrails, they're going to be the same species. So right now, is species left and species right? Or excuse me, I'm sorry. Is population left and population right still capable of reproduction? Yes. How about 2 million years later? They become even more different. But are they different enough to be considered different species? Not yet. They're still the same. Let's say 2 million years goes by. Are they still the same species? Yeah. But how about now? They basically crossed the threshold, the point of no return. Now they're different species. Their genetics are so different now that they're no longer compatible with each other. So now you have species left and you have species right. Left can no longer reproduce with right, and neither of them, this is part that some people got a little lost today, so I'll make sure I'm clear. Neither of them would be able to reproduce with their common ancestor either. That's not going to happen. Okay? All right. Let's get down. Let me move this down. Let's get to microevolution. So micro means small scale, and evolution means change over time. So these are going to be small scale changes over time, specifically to populations, or let me rephrase that, specifically to the allele frequency. That's what I meant to write. Specifically to the allele frequency of populations within a common species. I'll break it all down. I'm not just going to put a period and expect you guys to understand that. Will, could a man from Ireland, which is Northern Europe, successfully reproduce with a woman from Kenya, which is Central Africa? Why is that? They're the same species. Would you say there's diversity and differences inherent between an Irishman and a Kenyan woman? Yeah. Europe and Africa, of course. But as you said, they're still the same species. So there's not enough differences yet. You know what a Great Dane dog is? You know what a Chihuahua is? Can they breed? So you're saying they're different species. So the Irish man is a Homo sapien. The Kenyan woman is a Homo sapien, same species, right? The Great Dane, you don't need to write this, guys, is a Canis lupus. The Chihuahua is a Canis lupus. So I'll ask you again, can they breed? Yes, despite how different they are. Every breed of dog is the same species. You call the offspring of dogs from mixed breeding mutts. Some people even refer to themselves as mutts. They'll say, oh, I'm part Scottish, I'm part Native American, I'm part Samoan, I'm part German, I'm a mutt. You know, you're a little bit of this and that and all over the world. That's where they get the term from. So here's what I'm getting at. First off, you guys need to know what a population is. You're going to hear this term for the rest of the week. A population is simply a group of individuals of the same species in the same place and at the same time. Right now, you guys are considered a population. Plant High School is a population of humans. Now, the other term that's in that definition for microevolution is allele frequency. We need to bring back a term from Unit 5. It is how often an allele appears in a population. You know, in Germany, for example, The allele for blue eyes is likely much greater than it is in South Korea. It's all about how frequently a specific allele, which is a version of a trait, appears in a population. So those are two other terms I want to make sure you guys recall. An allele is a form of a trait. We typically call them dominant alleles or recessive alleles. We would represent them as like a capital letter for dominant or recessive letter for, or a lowercase letter for recessive. And there's something else that you'll most definitely need to know for later this week as I teach you Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium in a few days, is frequency. Frequency is a percentage expressed as a decimal. It also just means how often something happens or occurs. How frequently do you eat in a day? How frequently are you late to class in a day? How frequently do you have to use the restroom in a day? Those are just frequency. How often does it happen? But for this topic, I want you to be sure you guys know how to do this and convert a percentage into a frequency. So just humor me here. If I have 100%, how do you write that as a frequency? 1.00 or just 1 is fine. How about 99%? 0.99. How about 50%? 0.50. How about 10%? 0.10. How about 1%? 0.01. When we do Hardy-Weinberg in a few days, the math, you need to have your answers as a frequency. If you like to, baseball season's coming up. If Phillips' favorite player is batting 334, he's hitting the ball 33.4% of the time. If Plant High School's lacrosse team is playing 500 right now, that means that their winning average is 0.500. That's 50%. They're winning 50% of the games. Okay, so let me give you guys an example here of what I mean by you have differences inherent in every population around the world for every species. So let's say that we have a Plant High School population. And we're going to compare it to a Robinson High School population. And I want to talk about the frequency of the recessive allele for blonde hair. Let's say that at Plant High School, the frequency for the allele for blonde hair is 0.40, otherwise known as 40%. Let's say at Robinson High School, the frequency for the blonde allele is 0.15 or 15%. I want to make sure that you guys are very clear on how to read this before I even get to lesson 72, 73, and 74. Do you have to be blonde to have the blonde allele? No. What could your genotype be where you're not blonde, but you have the allele for it? Okay, so that leads me to the next question. Would I be correct in saying that in either Plant High School or Robinson High School, or anywhere for that matter, if 100% of the school is brunette, okay, then the recessive allele doesn't exist? Is that an accurate statement? James, you're immediately shaking your head no. So why not? You could be heterozygous for all I know. You have dark hair, but you could be a carrier for blonde. Can I tell by looking at you? No. So the answer is no, they could be heterozygous. So keep that in mind, that just because you have a population that is showing the dominant trait does not mean that they have to be homozygous dominant. Your brain is going to want to take you there. I'm going to have to pull you back sometimes. Okay? So here's my next question. We got humans at Plant High School. 40% of the population of humans at Plant High School have the allele for blonde hair, while only 15% have the trait at Robinson. Does that make the humans at Robinson a different species than the humans at Plant? No. There are inherent differences within a species. Every zebra has a different stripe pattern. That doesn't make them different species. They're just variations within. So microevolution are going to be differences within the species. Just like what we've talked about earlier, Bruno is a human male, and so is Nelson. Bruno's taller than Nelson. Doesn't make Bruno a different species. There's just differences within our species. That's microevolution. Macroevolution is where you have achieved so much genetic difference that you're no longer the same. You are a different species. So Will said accurately, an Irishman and a Kenyan woman today are a human. They're both humans. They could successfully breed. 50 million years from now, I don't know. Maybe they evolve into new species of humans. We'll have to wait and see. Okay. Here's the last thing I want to ask you guys, and we'll close it down. Let's see here. Let me pull up the internet again. In Florida, we have a major Burmese python problem. Let me see if I can pull up the Burmese pythons here. Here they are. These pythons are from Asia. What happened was in 1992, there was a hurricane, Hurricane Andrew, Category 5 hurricane. First one of the year, A for Andrew. It hit Miami. And there was this guy. It's funny how this works. There's this guy that lived on the border of the Everglades down there who had this big reptile barn. And he kept a bunch of exotic species of reptiles from across the world. And the hurricane blew his barn down. And all the reptiles escaped, some of which were pythons. And they slithered into the Everglades. And then 30 plus years later, we have a massive infestation of invasive pythons in the Everglades. 99% of the mammals are gone. Possums, raccoons, squirrels, deer, rabbits, you name it. History. The only thing that can really defend itself is an alligator and a crocodile down there. Well, right now, these pythons are likely genetically similar to the ones in Asia, where they originally came from. These pythons are originally from Asia. But let's go forward 15 million years in the future. Will the pythons that are in the Everglades have evolved the same way as their cousins over in Asia? No. So they'll likely evolve into different species. The ones that are alive now are likely still compatible, but as time goes forward, look at me. They're going to diverge into different directions. And eventually they're going to reach that point of no return where they have become different species and they are no longer compatible with each other. That's what's likely going to happen. All right. That is it for this lesson. Hold on.